Hello and welcome or welcome back. My name is Fabien Butazzi, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at a new way to use dodge and burn in Photoshop. Now, if you're not familiar with dodging and burning, it's a technique that is mostly used to work on highlights and shadows of an image to create more contrast or to make some parts of an image stand out. It does much more than this, but in a nutshell that's how people use it most of the time. And the way these used to be done, when the tools were first introduced in Photoshop, was to select either the dodge or the burn tool by going to the toolbar here and selecting either the dodge or the burn tool. Then once you select them, you apply them directly on the image. So for example, here in the waterfall, I want to use the dodge tool to increase the highlights. And you see that the waterfall is now turning white. It's not the best way to do it, but it's just to show you what this effect does. And the same with burn. If I go to the burn tool and I go to an area that is dark and I want to increase the shadows on this area, I then paint and make the area that I paint darker. Now, these tools in the toolbar, they do the job, and they were great when they were introduced in Photoshop. But there are two, maybe three main issues here. So first of all, working directly on an image means we apply the adjustments destructively, so there's no going back. If you now close the file and want to edit this again later, then all these previous edits are now embedded forever in the image. They burn in the image, pun intended. Secondly, there is no way to erase. So let's say I dodge an area here. Again, I'm going to do these crazy edits on this area of the waterfall, but then I go onto the rock and I didn't want that. So I want to keep this area on the water but not the one on the rock. So I hit E to select the eraser and I want to erase the area on the rock. But this erases the whole image, not just what I've done with the dodge tool. So we can't really erase anything. And thirdly, and this is something that doesn't really happen all the time, but it happens sometimes, editing directly on an image causes some undesired color shifting because we are manipulating pixels, and so sometimes this causes undesired effects. Now, because of these issues, photographers and retouchers have come up with a different way to do dodging and burning. And this is something that now almost every photographer and retoucher use, and it consists in creating a new layer, fill it with 50% gray and then paint on it. So how do we do that? Well, the fastest way to create a 50% gray layer is to click on the new layer icon down here in the toolbar while holding the Alt Option key. Or if you only want to use the keyboard, you can do this by clicking Ctrl Shift and N for new. So this opens the new layer panel where you can tell Photoshop to create a new layer with the options that you need. So we're gonna name this dodge and burn, and then select overlay as the mode for this new layer, and this will activate the option fill with overlay neutral color 50% gray. So we're gonna tick the box here, click OK, and this creates this new dodge and burn layer with the overlay blending mode, which is filled with 50% gray. Now, to show you this, if I switch back to normal blending mode, you can see that this is now 50% gray. The reason we choose overlay here is because, as you can see, this makes the 50% gray feel completely transparent. Overlay works by showing only what is lighter or darker than this 50% gray. It's the same with soft light, and some photographers like to use soft light rather than overlay because overlay seems to be more harsh on lights and shadows, but that really depends on the image that's underneath. But you can use soft light too, it does exactly the same thing. But I'm gonna stick with overlay for the rest of this tutorial. Now, having created this layer, we can now select the brush tool, going here or hitting the B key, and we can start painting black or white depending on whether we need to burn or dodge respectively. So now black is the foreground color, so I'm going to show you how I burn now. And using the brush tool is really a much faster way to edit. We don't have to switch tools, we don't have to switch between dodge and burn and eventually erase. And it's a tool that's very familiar to every photographer or retoucher. All we need to do is default the brush to black and white, so make sure that the background and foreground color are the black and white, and we can do this by pressing the D key. And then switch between the two using the X key. So if I now press X, it's going to toggle between white and black, white and black. So again, with black, we paint on the areas that we want to burn, like these rocks as a quick example. Or with the white, switching with the X, we paint on the areas that we want to dodge, like the waterfall. And you can see this is working perfectly fine. I'm able to dodge these areas, switch with the X key, and then burn the rocks or any area that I want to burn or darken in this image. Now this method is great because it's non-destructive, because we do everything in a separate layer, and by using black and white this way, it also means that there's no color shifting, which was one of the issues with the previous method. So that's absolutely great. Except, this is still not ideal, because if we want to erase part of our edit, we need to actually fill the layer back with the 50% gray. We can't use the eraser. And I think, frankly, this is a bit annoying. So also because if you open the color picker, so let's go back to choose the color here. Let's put it in the middle somewhere. You can see in this window here, there's nothing that tells you what 50% gray is. So if you're not familiar with this tool, how would you identify a 50% gray here? Now I'll tell you how. So basically you go here and you put 50%. These will give you a 50% gray. Or in the RGB fields, you put 128, 128, 128, or 80, 80, 80 as a hexadecimal value. And these will give you a 50% gray. But is this precise? Because if I change this to 127, this is still 50% gray. Okay, maybe this difference is negligible, but it's a difference nonetheless. And this is the only way that you can now erase what you've done before. So if I click OK, and then now I have this 50% gray as a foreground color, I can go back to the waterfall, paint over it, and this is going to erase the changes I've done before. But it's not exactly intuitive, is it? And so to overcome this issue, some have come up with the idea to use a transparent layer rather than a gray one. So let me hide this gray layer. I'm going to add a new one, pressing Alt and New Layer, or Control Shift N, and this time I'm gonna call it Dodge and Burn Transparent. Still switch to overlay mode, but without ticking the Fill Overlay Neutral Color 50% gray. So hit OK, and now we have a transparent layer. So if I, let's say, hide the background image, you can tell this is now a transparent layer. As earlier, I can default the foreground and background color to black and white by pressing D, and then I can use the brush to again burn and dodge the areas that I want to edit. So I'm going to slightly burn the rock here, and then press X to toggle between black and white and make white the active color, and then I'm going to dodge the waterfall here. You can see it's working the exact same way of the 50% gray layer. But the difference now is that we can finally use the eraser. So if I press E, I can use it only in the areas that I was painting on, without the needing to find a way to paint with 50% gray over the previous brushes. So now you have the freedom to erase in a more natural way, and it's quickly done by either switching to the eraser, clicking the E key, or holding it while still using the brush. So I'm back to the brush now. You can see I'm painting, so I'm using the brush. And if I just hold the E key while I'm still using the brush tool, I can delete. And then when I release the E key, it's back to the brush. So I can start painting again. So there you have it. Whether you go with the majority and use the 50% gray layer, or whether you use the transparent layer alternative, this is basically the way that most have done dodge and burn in the last many years. But to me, this is still not ideal. I know it's fast, I know it's non-destructive as well, and you can also use the eraser, but I feel we still don't have full control over our edits. Now first, again with the eraser, so yes, you can use it now with a transparent layer, but if you dodge an area and then burn another one that's exactly next to it, and then you only want to erase one of them, then you may have a hard time doing it precisely. Also, there's one thing I thought, that this method applies the overlay or soft light blending mode to both dodging and burning. But are these edits equal? Well, in a few experiments with my images, I actually found that overlay works better with the dodging part, painting in white, but with burning, my images come out better when using soft light. It might be down to personal taste because I like my shadows a bit softer, but in some cases, and especially if you work with portraits I suppose, you want to achieve this sort of finesse. And I can show you that there is a slight difference, and I hope that the compression of the video on YouTube will still allow you to see the difference. But here, the top brushes are the ones with the soft light blending mode applied, and the bottom ones are the ones with the overlay mode applied. And I hope that you can tell on YouTube that the bottom ones are a bit harsher. So what I started doing lately, and I'll show you in a different image, so that we're not stuck with the same one for the whole video, is using two transparent layers, which gives me the granular control that I need and the ideal results that I want. Now with the two layers, I can still apply the edits non-destructively, of course, and I can erase whichever edit I need without affecting the other, but I can get a better effect on highlights and shadows. Now obviously I add a little complexity, because now there are two layers to work on rather than one, but with some images, and particularly when you really need to improve the little details, this works wonders. So with this image, I would create one layer for the dodging part and apply the overlay mode without filling it with the 50% grey. And then I would create a second layer for burn, which will have the soft light mode. And then with the brush, I would paint with white over the dodge layer, like for example in this foreground 3, or to make the snow even whiter, or to increase the drama in the clouds. And then switch to the burn layer, switch to black, and do the same wherever I want to burn parts of the image. Now, if you're curious, both images were shot in Georgia, the country, and I can't recommend Georgia enough to any landscape photographer really. Now, because I have this dodge and burn onto two separate layers, I can easily erase one or the other. So if I'm on the burn layer, I can keep the E pressed, the E key pressed, and then erase, knowing that I will only erase the burn layer. Same if I switch to the dodge layer and I press the E key to erase, I know that I will only erase the edits in these specific layers. So I will only erase my dodging edits. Not dodgy, dodging. So there it is. And I actually commented on a video by Piximperfect where Unmesh talked about dodging and burning, and my comment was generating quite some interest. So maybe it's something you want to try as well. And if you want, this is how it's done. But I'm not saying you must use this new method. I'm only showing my way and the one that's given the best results to me. It might be different for you, and it's absolutely fine if any other method works well for you. So I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure you give it a like. And let me know in the comments what you think about this method. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you'll know whenever I publish new tips and tricks about Photoshop, Lightroom and any other editing software. And also if you want to follow my photo journeys around. So that's it, and until next time, bye!